Here is just a small glimpse of a Facebook video I'm talking about.
I have no idea why you guys are doing this. Yeah, you can show me your search warrant before you go through my house.
You're the occupier or tenant?
Yeah, I own this house.
There it is. There's a search warrant.
Search warrant for what?
Now, what I will explain to you is if you want to listen, you've got your phone going.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Right. Now, you're under arrest in relation to incitement.
Incitement?
We seize any computers and
That's fine, can I just
let me finish. Any mobile telephone you've got, okay? So what we want is any mobile telephone you've got.
You don't need that.
No, that's actually my sister's phone. It's not my
Yeah,
name.
it's her sister's.
Doesn't matter. Any device in this house we're taking.
This is
Well,
ridiculous.
You're not taking my phone.
Well,
I'm taking any device, mate.
That's my phone. It's nothing to do with her. It's my phone.
Now, apologies if you've seen that before. I've seen it myself many times now, and to be perfectly honest, it doesn't get any easier to watch. But we all need to watch it over and over and over again. We need to share it on social media. We need to show it to our neighbours. We need to print screenshots of it and plaster it all over our houses. And if this ever ends, we need to show it to our grandchildren. What you've seen, what we've all seen, was footage of a pregnant woman arrested and handcuffed in her pyjamas while police ransack her home for computers and mobile phones, which they also seized, all in front of her young children who are obviously scared out of their minds. Now, here are some pictures of the woman, known at this stage as Zoe Lee, who was apparently so dangerous she had to be led away in handcuffs. This woman, the woman you're seeing now. Now, why was she handcuffed and frog marched off? Well, she wasn't the ringleader of some online child pornography ring. She wasn't suspected on terrorism charges. She wasn't cooking ice in her guest room. She didn't pose a risk to the life, liberty or property of anybody whatsoever. Zoe Lee was arrested for putting up this Facebook post. She was organising a peaceful anti-lockdown gathering in Ballarat. Ballarat, which by the way has just 5 active cases right now. As you can see, she stressed that it was a peaceful protest. She encouraged everyone to wear a mask. And in what is now a very sad irony, she asks everyone to follow social distancing measures so that nobody gets arrested. Well, sadly, they didn't get the chance. Nevertheless, she was charged with incitement to gather at a public park. Now, did Victoria Police apologise for handcuffing a pregnant woman in front of her children over a Facebook post? No. They've since charged her. Zoe Lee is currently on bail and is due to appear in the Magistrates Court January next year. She's looking at a sentence of 15 years. 15 years for a Facebook post. And police have issued a statement promising a swift and firm response for anyone who sets foot in the park on the weekend. But as I said earlier this week, if police were so worried about protests and the coronavirus, then why did they let this happen just months ago? And for anybody listening to this podcast right now, what we're showing you is an image of the Black Lives Matter rallies in June, where you can see 10,000 people very close together, not social distancing. The police did nothing. And it wasn't just that they couldn't be bothered putting a stop to it, they facilitated it. Again, here is Assistant Commissioner Luke Cornelius talking about the anti-lockdown protests last week, and then the very same cop talking about Black Lives Matter back in June.
But don't try and dress that up when in actual fact the real reason why you're leaving home is so that you can wander down the street with a bunch of other buffheads actually engaging in protest. We're not idiots, and Victorians are not idiots. We absolutely understand the sentiment and the anger that lies behind that, and we're very keen to support community here in giving voice to their concerns and their protests.
Well, there you have it. This isn't about containing the spread of the disease by preventing a mass gathering. Victoria Police were perfectly fine with a mass gathering back in June. They supported it. You just saw Luke Cornelius saying it. Yeah, sure, they slapped a $1,600 fine on 3 of the organisers as a token gesture, but they didn't trawl through anyone's Facebook. As far as I can tell, nobody from the Black Lives Matter movement had their door kicked down by jackbooted thugs who arrested them in front of their children. Nobody was charged with a sentence carrying up to 15 years imprisonment over Black Lives Matter, nor should they have. In fact, policing was so selective when it came to Black Lives Matter that legal advice we at the IPA received suggests that police could have even acted illegally. You see, the Black Lives Matter brigade vote for Daniel Andrews. Well, they probably vote Green or something, but they preference the Labor Party. So in effect, they vote for Daniel Andrews. Anti-lockdown protesters, people who have concerns over minor, trivial matters like their livelihoods and their basic liberties, well, they're unlikely to vote for Daniel Andrews if they ever did. So they don't matter. See the pattern emerging here? But look, we can expect Daniel Andrews to play politics. It's what he's done. He's been doing it since March. And frankly, he's fooled a lot of people by doing it. But what should alarm us is that our police force has been brought into it. There's no getting around it now. Victoria is a police state. That's not hyperbole. That's not an exaggeration. That's not some paranoid libertarian fantasy. It's happening. It's happening here in Melbourne. You saw the video. Under the guise of public health orders, police are arresting people for speaking out against the government. And even now, even after all this, the bizarre cult of social distance warriors, the I Stand With Dan Brigade, they're trying to justify this. I mean, get a load of this guy, some bloke on Twitter going by the name Matt H. He compared Zoe Lee to a drug dealer, saying that, quote, spreading misinformation is just as dangerous, if not more so. And that, my friends, is the rub. This is what the political left, quite frankly, have been playing at for years. The most dangerous thing facing us all, to them, in their eyes, isn't a pandemic or anything else. It's dangerous information. You know, because people are obviously too stupid to decide for themselves. And if they're given bad information, they won't make the best choices. They won't reach the right decisions on certain public policy issues. And if they don't think the right way, maybe they won't vote the right way. So they reckon we better make sure that people get the right information to keep them safe, of course. And that, of course, means that there should be consequences for people who spread the wrong information. The truth of all this is that this didn't start with Zoe Lee. What we are seeing now has been coming for a long, long time. This is what happened when we bought into the idea that words were dangerous. This is what happened when we started worrying about a vague notion called hate speech. This is what happened when we started cancelling the visas of international speakers because they would, apparently according to the government, incite discord in the community. That's a real thing. Look it up. This is what happened when we let Andrew Bolt be dragged to court for writing a newspaper column, when 3 university students were hounded by the Human Rights Commission for objecting to a segregated computer lab. This is what happened when we let the very same Victoria Police, the very villains we're dealing with now, charge Milo Yiannopoulos outrageous security fees in response to violent protests against him. Now, did I ever think that in Australia we would see images of someone being arrested and charged over nothing more than a Facebook post? No, even I didn't think that. But it makes perfect sense. History tells us that states of emergency are often used as a pretext to subvert the democratic process. They certainly are being here. And then temporary measures become permanent. Governments that give themselves these awesome new powers don't want to give them back lightly. Hitler convinced the German parliament to give him total authority after the Reichstag fire. And no, I'm obviously not saying that anything happening in Victoria right now is on par with Nazi Germany. I have every personal reason for not making that comparison. But what I am saying is that freedom dies when people uncritically let the government do whatever it wants. And when the population trades freedom for safety at all costs, it ends really, really badly. And for those of you who are saying, oh, well, look, this is a pandemic, it's a once-in-a-generation thing, we just have to get over it and then everything will be fine again. You're kidding them. You're kidding yourselves. This won't be the only time that the government gives itself these powers. What do you think a climate emergency means? It means the people are obviously too stupid to understand how dangerous climate change is, so they won't vote for any climate action. Let's just declare a climate emergency and do it anyway. It's an emergency. What happens when some Labor government decides to declare an inequality emergency or a budget emergency to levy taxes and seize property without parliamentary approval? Yeah, this all sounds far-fetched now, but wait, just wait. If what happened to Zoe Lee can be allowed to happen in the state of Victoria, then it will happen to me, and guess what? It will happen to you. This is why we read Kafka. This is why we read George Orwell. This is why I personally have spent my entire adult life in one way or another arguing for the rule of law, individual freedoms, and a government that leaves you the hell alone. Look, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't planning on attending any protests on Saturday, and I probably still won't. It's tempting, but I probably still won't. I know what will happen. I know that Dan Andrews will use the protests on Saturday as an excuse to delay his roadmap to reopening, which is supposed to be announced on Sunday. A plan which, by the way, I can tell you right now, he doesn't have. This has been his plan all along. He's desperately in need of a scapegoat right now. That's his playbook. He's blamed everybody from the feds to millennials to migrant families. He'll blame anti-lockdown protesters, mark my words. These protests will play right into his hands. You just watch. But even for all that, I can't say I don't understand why people are marching. I can't say I don't understand why people are marching around Dandenong and Broadmeadows right now. What other options do we have? We can't raise any of this with our Member of Parliament. None of these laws have even been made by the Parliament. They've been made by Brett Sutton. The borders are closed, so nobody can leave. And now we know, after this week, that we can't even post anything on Facebook. At least not without a knock at the door.